It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With, the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Wherever you're listening from, I do hope you take that moment right now to hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with the series. We release new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists, discover some new ones, or know what's happening in the music world. You can find us, of course, at all the regular spots, where you're listening from right now, of course. But that includes the big ones like iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Just type in Kyle Meredith With, and we'll take care of the rest. I'm Kyle Meredith, and today I'm going to be talking with Tei Shi. She's back with a brand new single called Die For Your Love, and in fact, this sort of starts a new part of her career, and we're going to be talking about that, getting away from the label game and having more control over what she's doing, how she ended up at a songwriter's retreat where, in the end, she ended up writing this set of music, which will eventually become an EP in just 6 days. So I want to hear what that experience was like. Also about the difference in writing as a bilingual singer. She writes both in English and Spanish. I want to hear what that process, how they differ as well. And she'll tell us about what to expect from the songs we haven't heard from this upcoming single. But of course, we get into that. We'll catch up about how her career has been going this year, as we have with every artist. That does include a canceled tour with Blood Orange. She was the opening act on the Blood Orange. I think they got like 3 dates into it. So we're going to be asking about what the mood was like in the area around that time, as well as her collaborations with Blood Orange, too. They've done several. They've got several on the books, so there's got to be a good reason for that. So let's jump into it. It's Kyle Meredith with Tei Shi.
Hey, Kyle. It's Val.
Well, I know there's lots to talk about because last year you had the record with La Linda, and there's already new music out with Die For Your Love, and I want to talk about those too. But of course, with any musician right now, everybody's sort of getting their footing as to a change of plans, and I know that was definitely, or it looks like that was part of what you were up against too, because you had just started a tour with Blood Orange, right?
Yeah, we had gotten 2 dates into the tour, and then it became very apparent that we had to cancel it. So that was kind of the beginning of this whole quarantine situation for me, which sucked.
Right. What was the mood of those, if you don't mind my asking, because, it really was, the rug was yanked out from a lot of artists, but, for the few that were on the road, it seems to be that you could sense that there was the change in the air, or other artists could anyway.
Yeah, I think there was definitely, from one day to the next, there was, something changed, because I think we started the tour and everybody, all of this was kind of going on and starting to be talked about a lot more over here, but I don't think the public had kind of yet processed the fact that we were going to have to change all of our plans. So I think we were kind of starting the tour and we were all super excited, and it was really fun. Those first 2 shows were some of the most fun I've ever had, on tour, and we were really excited. The audience was super excited. It was really good energy. And then we had a day off between that second show and the next one. And it was during that day off that I think everything kind of started to shift. I think in general, that was the day that I think the tone kind of changed for everyone. And it just so happened that it was we had this tour happening, and so there was kind of that day where I think everybody knew it was going to be canceled. And then we finally heard the last word that it was canceled, and it was pretty, it was sad. I think everybody I think started panicking right around that time too, and kind of thinking, okay, if shit's really going to hit the fan, how am I going to get home? How do I, get back to my loved ones? We're in the middle of nowhere right now. There were all those feelings. And then of course, just the sadness of, you spend at least a month kind of mentally, physically, in terms of material, preparing yourself for this, for this tour. And then all of a sudden it's oh, okay, well, what do I do now? So
Right.
There was that kind of feeling. I think there was a lot of kind of disbelief. And I think it was just what everybody was going through. I think there were these kind of 24, 48 hours where everybody just kind of, it hit us, I think in general, here in the States. So we were kind of, experiencing all those same things, but also with the sadness of having started a really great tour and then just having to go home.
Well, especially knowing that, going through all that prep and just even the mentality as you're talking about to just get to that point and suddenly, there it is wiped away. And I'll say this, that's a shame for any artist, but especially this tour right here, because the two of you, both with you and Blood Orange, I mean, what a great team. I know that's been a fruitful collaboration, it seems like anyway, but to take that onto the road, that looked like a cool show.
Yeah, that's the most upsetting part to me, is it was just kind of like, I think we had kind of been talking about touring together for a minute, and it just kind of lined up perfectly for this tour. And I was really excited because, I'm on a song of his, he's on a song of mine. So there's that whole cross, we were going to do these songs together live, and I've performed with him and his band a bunch of times before, doing our song at festivals and whatnot. So I've become really, really tight with his whole crew and band, and it was just a really lovely meshing of our worlds. And yeah, I think it was a great bill, but maybe it'll happen again.
I'll bring this up while we're here too, because as you're mentioning the collaborations you all have done in the past, what does he bring that maybe others don't? What do you get out of collaborating with Blood Orange? That's worked so well for you all?
What's unique about Dev and the way he works and collaborates is he's very much he doesn't enforce his presence in a way of here's what I'm thinking and here are all my ideas. He's kind of more of a listener, and then he'll kind of just be quiet and do his thing for 2 minutes, and it's oh wow, you just made the most beautiful incredible thing. So it's that kind of having somebody who he's just very easy to collaborate with. And I think he also understands, because he's a singer and he's worked with so many singers. I think he understands what that writing process is and should be for someone like me. So the process is really easy, and he's just very easy about things. So there's no pressure. There's no we have to do this or that ever. And I think for me that just works really well, and it kind of, because I think I tend to maybe get fixated or kind of intense about things. So I think he kind of lets me let go of that.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe that's rubbed off a little bit, at least as you've been going forward, because even with a full album having just come out last year, you are already releasing new music, and Die for Your Love is what we've heard first on this, which I hear there's even more on the way, right? This is the start of what, an EP?
Yeah. This is and I'm finishing the EP right now, and Die for Your Love is going to be the first single off of it.
So to be able to kind of take what you were saying there with Dez and Blood Orange, just it makes it sound like you're going a little bit of an easier route. I don't know if that's the case, but are you able to kind of, how are you, we're saying it, just the intensity or the scrutiny that you pour over something?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think also the two albums I've released so far were kind of within a very kind of a situation that was more kind of structured around the traditional label artist structure. And I feel that kind of led to me feeling, I don't know, I think the process was always a little, it wasn't as intuitive and fun as I wanted it to be. And I think as a result, both of those albums ended up taking a pretty long time to come out, at least in my opinion, because I wrote most of that material, over a relatively relatively short period of time. And then there would always be a year or, of just trying to, move through all the obstacles of getting everything done and getting all the support and getting it out. And so now that I'm outside of that and I'm functioning more, more like an independent artist, I think I've regained some of that freedom of just being able to make something quickly and put it out quickly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this EP. I'm always making music and wanting to put it out. And I just didn't really want to wait as long and kind of, when you wait so long on something, then you start overthinking it. And, so that's kind of what the inertia like behind this EP is just moving into a space where I can just put something out and, not overthink it, not necessarily make an album, but just kind of move into the next phase.
Have you noticed a change in the way you relate to your songs, a relationship with your songs with these new ones, whereas something that, is finally making its way out, as you said, that you've already sat on for however long, a year or two?
Yeah. I think definitely. I feel like because I wrote the EP over the course of like a week when I was at a writing retreat in Texas, and so because of that, it was just kind of the environment around writing these songs was very different than when I'm writing songs for an album, and maybe I'm here in LA and I'm working with a bunch of different people, and it takes time to move a song forward because you're kind of, you have to work with a bunch of other people's schedules, and it's just kind of like harder, I think, to approach things that way. So this time I wrote the EP in like 6 days. It was just more about the songwriting than anything else. And I think I was also coming at it when I was writing these songs, I was trying to kind of write from a place that was a little more outside of myself, like not so personal of like, what do I want to say, and like, let me say that, and more just kind of like, maybe it's a story and I'm like telling the story, or maybe I'm singing this song through the eyes of somebody who is blank. You know what I mean? I was kind of trying to play with those things a little more. So I think the songs are definitely like different than some of my past music in that way. I feel like I'm always trying to explore like writing in different ways, or at least I'm trying to do that more now.
Well, I know there's a lot of ways to write a song. There's a lot of ways to make an album, and talking about, working with so many collaborators, and as I read, that happened on the last record too. It was more in that, what I would think, the big pop sense with those songwriting collaborators, which, for me, and I wouldn't call myself a musician in any way, but it seems like, I'm not putting that down. I don't want this to come across like I'd put down any way to write a song, but the way you're talking about now with this EP sounds like it is so much, you have so much opportunity to be more immediate, to have your own voice come through, whereas the other version seems more like a machine in a way, to me.
I think the reason why my album La Linda took me so long to finish and get out was because I was really trying to conserve that element of it very much being me and what I was envisioning, despite the fact that I was working with so many people. So in some ways it was that. Well, in some ways it was that because if you think about, like, you're working with 9 different producers across this album, and, there's different combinations of them on different songs, and not everybody is involved across the board. So there's kind of, you lose that like cohesive element. So I was really like trying to lead the ship in that way and make sure that even though it was really fragmented like that, it ended up feeling like one world. And so I think that's kind of why I really kind of slaved over it. And it took me a really long time to get some of those songs to where I wanted them. Like some of the songs, it was like a 2-year process. So I think that plays into what you were saying. And with this EP, I didn't want to start writing songs in like a session with, a new producer I was working with. I wanted to just like write the songs over kind of the most basic things and then figure out the production. So in that way, it was more like, much more like direct and easy in a way. Yeah.
I would say that you've accomplished it too, because I didn't know anything about, the collaborators until long after I'd heard the record. And now even when I look back on it, it is impressive what you were able to pull off, because you take a song like We, and I'm projecting a little bit here because when I hear Thief, like these seem to talk to each other. Thief seems to follow where you were going from We. Like it does seem cohesive in that way. Was that the case between those two songs? Do you see it that way?
I actually never really saw it that way until you said that just now, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I also think they might be back to back on the track list, or no, they're not. But I think they were kind of coming from the same place. I wrote them at different times, but I think they were coming from the same place of like, I think I was experiencing like some growth and kind of this phase of like rebirth and like letting go of a lot of past baggage. And I think We and Thief are both songs that talk about that, kind of about this like shedding of the weight of stuff and moving into like a more hopeful phase. But yeah, I never really thought about those two songs going hand in hand. But yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Well, I love how when stuff like that sort of happens, even if it's unintentional, because it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming from the same person. It's all coming from you. So,
For
in
sure.
some degree, they all should talk to each other.
Yeah, and I
in
think
one way,
I
at
think
least, there's a
that's one
chance.
of the things that you only really start to notice, like as an artist. Like at least for me, I only really start to like notice those things once the record is like finished. But it's of course it makes sense. You're writing this like body of work during a time in your life, and you are the same person, and you're experiencing a lot of the same emotions. So the songs are coming out of this place. But I feel like it's really fun that to me that like I don't really put together those threads at all until like it's finished, and then I'm kind of like, oh, I said this in that song, and that ties into this.
On another side, how you write. I mean, you're also a bilingual singer. I mean, every few years we get a song that seems to break the barrier, and it feels like that's happening a little bit more. And I guess what I'm talking about specifically is especially when a Spanish type of song more often than other nationalities seems to make it into the English world. But when you're writing, when I listen to those, they still sound like very different types of pop songs. Of course, it happens mostly in the pop world. For you as a bilingual singer, are there differences in how you approach a song for an English listener versus possibly, a Spanish listener, a difference in that?
I think there is. When I was writing those songs in Spanish, because I was starting to write a lot more in Spanish around when I was working on the album, and I especially noticed it, like, because, I was writing all these songs in English, and then I was kind of writing some stuff in Spanish, but then I made the conscious choice that I wanted to have Spanish songs on the record. So I kind of got myself into that mindset. And when I did that, I kind of immediately noticed a difference. I don't know if it's still there, but I think it kind of opened up like a different approach to writing, where I feel like in Spanish, it's more almost like immediate, like just phrases, words, like would just come to me and I'll go off of that. Whereas when I write in English, it's maybe a little bit more like I'm thinking about it. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but something about like writing in Spanish feels a little more like guttural, maybe. It's hard to, but I do think that when you write in different languages, you do kind of like, you access, different points of like how you're approaching writing. And I think that's something really cool that I discovered more when I was making the album.
It's really interesting. And that's something that, most artists, they don't have that muscle. That's a tool that, even the more adventurous artists, to some degree, they're still, they're only able to use the tools that they have. They're only playing in the sandbox that they're in. And to have that kind of ability there, it is really interesting to hear about what doors that can open for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like in any, I think speaking, multiple languages in itself is like, it allows you to kind of like think from different places a little bit. And so I feel like really, I feel lucky that I speak more than one language and I can use that in my writing, for sure. Yeah.
So I will ask, now that we've heard Die for Your Love, what else can we expect then from the upcoming songs? Is there anything that's become very obvious to you?
I mean, I think sonically it's a pretty wide range. I mean, I kind of feel like that's what I end up doing on everything I release. Like I kind of like to have, this song is one extreme, this song is the other extreme, and then I fill in the blank. And that's kind of what the EP is. Like there's Die for Your Love obviously is much more, like a bigger production. It's more of a pop song. It's more of a banger, like trying to, get you to dance. And then there is stuff that is a lot more acoustic and very raw. And then kind of that in between is filled in by some of the other songs. So Die for Your Love is like one end of the spectrum sonically. But in terms of like the songs and all the songs kind of came from a very specific emotional place because I wrote them all within this week. And it was like at the beginning of the year, January, the year kind of started out on a very bleak note for me. Just some personal things happened and I was kind of like, I feel like I started experiencing some of this like mass depression that we're all experiencing, like from coronavirus. I feel like I started experiencing that like at the beginning of the year. And I was like, when I went to Texas on this writing retreat, I was in this very like kind of just really down and like this kind of very like pessimistic mindset. And the songs all came out of that. And it felt like I was kind of writing this EP about this kind of apocalyptic situation. Like, and weirdly enough, then, you know, all this stuff happened and I felt like, oh, like, you know, I kind of felt like I had this feeling of like impending doom, like when I was writing the songs, and I didn't really, it was a weird time, and like these songs all came of it, and I'm really, you know, happy about that. But yeah, it's kind of interesting now that I feel like, you know, we're all going through this really dark time. It's like a weird, it's a weird feeling because now they kind of have like a little bit more relevance to me.
You're ahead of us on that emotional train. A few steps in front. You're like, this is what you're going to feel next.
Yeah,
by the way.
for some reason. Yeah, the year like it just started off that way. So
really interesting. Well, I look forward to hearing those as well. Val, it was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much again for doing this. I am really enjoying all the music that you're putting out. You're one of the most interesting artists in the game right now, so thank you for doing what you're doing.
Wow, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Yeah, I'm excited to share the rest of the EP with you.
Well, I'll be listening. We'll all be listening. Thanks for that. And again, thanks for taking the time to talk today. It was a real pleasure.
Same. Okay. Bye.
And my thanks to Tei Shi. Again, the brand new single is called Die For Your Love, and it's out now. And thanks to you for checking out the series. Again, before you get out of here, I do hope if you're not already a subscriber, you'll take that moment to hit the subscribe button. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts from. Just type in Kyle Meredith with and look for new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday so you can keep up with your favorite artists, so you can discover some new ones, so you can know what's happening in the music world. After that, head to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, an hour full of song premieres and music news and anniversary spins and bonus interviews. That's WFPK.org. Consequence of Sound has your music and film news. You can find me on just about any social media platform too, at Kyle Meredith. I do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Jen, and I love horror movies.
I'm Mikey. I'm dead inside it. I also love horror movies.
And we really like to torture our friend Todd because he hates horror movies.
That I do. And that's why they call me the horror virgin.
That's the only reason we call him that.
I'm not, no other reasons at all. None at all.
Whatever. So
every week we take him through the encyclopedia of horror, the good, the bad, the ridiculously Jack Frosts.
And then we make fun of it more or less.
Or explain its deceptive feminism.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. That's my thing.
And I'm the funny one. Our episodes drop on Monday, so check us out.